So today we had yet another bullish day for Tesla stock, despite the bad news we got today about Elon Musk now having to testify to the SEC about the acquisition for Twitter. Now this is very similar to what we saw yesterday for Tesla. For example, yesterday I made a video talking about Tesla stock being bullish, and this was despite the fact that we had bad news for Tesla. For example, yesterday we talked about how Tesla is recalling millions of vehicles due to a probe in its autopilot crashes, but one of the things I went ahead and said in that video is that that is pretty much a complete nothing burger, as one of the things we have to understand is that when Tesla does a recall, it's not like your traditional recalls with these other automakers. It's simply just a update, right? Your iPhone oftentimes needs to be it has to be updated, right? I think I still have to update mine, but that's not necessarily a real recall, but that's just a legacy term that kind of, you know, when the news mentions that for Tesla, a lot of individuals get scared and a lot of bears got excited, but Tesla still rose yesterday, and we saw Tesla stock do pretty well for today. And I want to go ahead and talk about some interesting things that we want to be aware about in regards to the overall markets as well as Tesla. For example, when we take a look at the broader markets and look at the S&P 500, not only has it recently broken out of this trend that has been a very strong trend, but today it also made a brand new all-time high, as well as the overall NASDAQ 100. When we take a look at the QQQs, which is the NASDAQ 100 index ETF, we see that as well made all-time highs as well. But it did kind of pull back just a little bit, but it's honestly not too bad considering the fact that we have pretty much rallied very strongly in November and also in December as well. Which, by the way, if you guys have been following this channel, this is exactly in sync with what I talked about in the past. I said in the beginning of November that November was going to be a very strong month for the overall markets. We saw November rally. I said that December, in the beginning of December, I said that we were most likely going to have some choppiness in the beginning of December due to all the labor data that was coming out, but ultimately I said that December was going to end up green, and that is exactly what we're currently seeing. Which, by the way, guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, consider tapping that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. And also, while you're at it, consider tapping that like button as well, as it does help out with the video reaching out to a newer audience, and it does help out in the YouTube algorithm. And so that's all I'm asking for you guys to do, while also encouraging you guys to watch the entirety of this video, as we definitely have some more topics we want to touch on, especially in regards to Tesla stock. For example, we recently got this update from an analyst on Wells Fargo that said that the auto sector could enter into a bearish territory in 2024. Now, the reason why I want to share this article is because it's not what you actually think. I was honestly pretty surprised by what this Wells Fargo analyst said, and I think you guys are going to be as well. Because when we look into the article, it says that for 2026, you're going to need 9 through 10% for electric drive systems for these vehicles, and that the Detroit 3 automakers, they're currently at 0 through 4% right now, so they're going to need to make a lot more of these unprofitable vehicles on the way to get there. Which, by the way, I want to just provide some context, right? A lot of these legacy automakers, especially the big three, the Detroit 3, they're not profitable on their EV vehicles. And so what this analyst is saying is that, hey, all these car companies, they need to start making more electric vehicles, right? There's like this mandate for them, but they're not profitable on them, and they're still way below the threshold on the amount that they need to have that are actually electric. And so that's pretty concerning, right? But he also goes on to say that pickup trucks are another area that people are not paying attention to. He goes on to say that pickups are historically where the vast majority of profits come from, especially for the Detroit 3, but their inventory has been creeping up and sales have been fairly flat. Now, this was pretty interesting for him to say, because I honestly wasn't paying attention to the creep up in inventory for a lot of the pickup trucks for these legacy automakers, and the only thing I could do is pretty much speculate. I don't have the exact reason or the answer why. I could just say a million different reasons. Perhaps maybe people don't have the money to buy a new pickup truck, or maybe a lot of the individuals who wanted to buy a new pickup truck, they're probably having their eyes on the Tesla Cybertruck. I mean, again, this is speculation, but it's also something that's pretty interesting that he noted. He also goes on to say that Ford, GM, and Stellantis are sells, and that Tesla and Rivian's, he views those as holds for 2024. Now, me personally, I'm not too sure about Rivian, but again, that's someone who I really haven't updated or really taken a look at Rivian's fundamentals. I haven't looked at their financial statements or even looked at the technicals. So I'm pretty much agnostic to Rivian. I haven't been paying attention. So let me know, guys, in the comment section below. Maybe someone's going to comment saying, Justin, you have to take a look at Rivian. It's a better opportunity than Tesla. And maybe you're right. I honestly haven't been paying attention to Rivian, but I think that we're going to have a lot of good opportunities for long-term holders for Tesla going into 2024. And we'll touch on that later on this video. But moving on, we're also seeing the Russell 2000, ticker symbol IWM, as the ETF, pretty much continue to push up. And this was actually something I mentioned within the Push and Profit private group. A lot of individuals, especially fund managers, have been very bearish on the small cap stocks. And I've been actually on the other end. I've been kind of like this contrarian saying, I'm actually pretty bullish for right now on a lot of these small cap stocks, and that is exactly what we're seeing, which, by the way, I just want to do a mini update over here. I don't have any further links to enroll in the Push and Profit private group. I took them down temporarily for now because there's a major update coming to the Push and Profit private group. But I also want to give a friendly reminder that I do have a free weekly market pulse insight where every single week I send out an email talking about what's going on in the overall economy and what are some things that we should absolutely be aware of. And so right now, no, there's no enrollment available to join the Push and Profit private group, but you can join my free weekly market pulse insights. But looking at the 10-year treasury yields, we are pretty much seeing them capitulate way further down from the peaks that we saw in late October. And this is one of the contributing factors to why we're seeing the overall markets rally, because there's this risk premium in the sense that when the 10-year treasury yields are up, well, that takes away appetite to invest in stocks. Why would you invest in stocks when you don't know what your return is going to be, when you could just invest in the 10-year treasury yields? You could just buy some bonds, and yeah, the bond prices go down, but the yields are pretty up. Well, you have this locked in guaranteed if you hold these bonds into maturity. But right now, we're seeing, bonds kind of go up, but the yields go downwards, and that's putting a lot of appetite for a lot of stocks right now. So that's something that we also want to be mindful of. I always say you want to look at the 10-year treasury yield to kind of understand just kind of like what we're seeing in the overall markets in terms of risk appetite. But with that said, I want us to go ahead and hop into my laptop. This way we could take a look at Tesla from a technical perspective as well, and also just cover some additional topics that I think everyone watching so far wants to keep an eye out for. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop taking a look at Tesla stock, and as mentioned earlier in the beginning of this video, we had two back-to-back days of Tesla actually closing up higher, right? 2 green days, and we haven't seen this for quite some time for Tesla, right? Of course, we have been selling off for quite a bit in the last few trading sessions, but as I mentioned earlier, we saw Tesla sell off because of the bad news about the recalls, but I told everyone on YouTube as well, for those within the Push and Profit private group, that this was pretty much just baloney, and that, of course, that the recalls for Tesla wasn't something of much substance, as of course, Tesla's recalls are just something that could be fixed with an update. And so, of course, once we had the economic data, or rather the monetary policy updates on the Federal Reserve pausing their interest rates, and then, of course, 30 minutes later, Jerome Powell speaking and kind of having this more dovish rhetoric, well, that propped the markets upwards. And it seems that we saw pretty much Tesla continue to push upwards despite the bad news, as I mentioned earlier, about Elon Musk having to now testify to the SEC about the acquisition for Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And so that's very interesting. In fact, if we take a look at Tesla from a daily time frame and look at it from a technical perspective, right? One of the things I've previously noted is that there's a lot of volume relative to price over here, and I mentioned that that was going to present itself as a shelf for Tesla, that Tesla was probably going to be met with some resistance, but today we actually blew past that area with a lot of volume relative to price, and we actually went up to this kind of like 253, almost 254 level. Now, one thing I still do want to highlight is that although I believe December to be a bullish month, I don't necessarily believe that Tesla is going to break out of this descending trend line. It's been a descending trend line that has been presented since all the way back in 2021. Of course, we understand that in 2022, that's when we saw Tesla stock basically fall down its most in the last few years. And pretty much 2023 has been a very strong year. Yeah, we've had some times and challenges, but we had a very strong July, also a very strong November. And so this is where we're currently at. I believe Tesla can continue pushing upwards, but this is an area that we want to watch out for. Do we break out of this descending trend line for December? I don't think that's very likely. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. Of course, I have to follow whatever takes place with the overall markets in Tesla. And so if it does break out of this descending trend line, as far as my long-term portfolio goes, I'll definitely go ahead and add more into my long-term position for Tesla. I only add into Tesla under two certain circumstances. And of course, you should only do whatever you see value in. You don't want to buy whenever I say so, or anyone on X or on YouTube or any fund manager. You only want to do whatever you see value for yourself, right? So for me personally, I like to buy Tesla when I see a lot of selling, but then confirmation of an uptrend, right? I did that back over here. I believe when Tesla was falling down, this was one of its earnings calls, sold off quite a bit. I talked about it selling off, that I knew it was most likely going to sell off of profit margins being a bit of an issue. And I added more into my long-term portfolio over here. Tesla rose up, but then we actually saw Tesla fall down further back in October, very bloody October. But if we do in fact see Tesla break out of this descending trend line, I'll definitely go ahead and add more into my long-term portfolio as it's breaking out of a new trend. And so just like what we saw with the S&P 500 index ETF, right? Let's go ahead and look at a daily time frame. Typically what you see is when a stock breaks out of a trend, that's when you see a lot of momentum kind of pile up. And so that's something that we want to be mindful with Tesla. Of course, I do still expect 2023 to be a challenge for Tesla, although we did have that Wells Fargo analyst say that it's going to be even more challenging for the other automakers. But I still believe that Tesla is going to be a little bit of a challenge for a lot of individuals, despite that the market's forward looking. We know that based on the dot plot we got from the Summary of Economic Projections yesterday, that the Feds are looking to actually forecast 4 or 3 more rate cuts into 2023. But one of the things we have to understand is that we don't, feel that the kind of the impact of those rate cuts automatically. It does take some time, and so that's something we want to be mindful of. I still think it's challenging to finance a new vehicle. It's hard, especially with interest rates still being high. Yeah, they may be coming down slightly, but we also have to understand what are the financial conditions of the individuals who, inflation has been coming down, but their wallets have been getting thinner and thinner, right? Savings accounts are not as high as they once were during the peak of the pandemic. And so something that we want to be mindful of. But again, I'll go ahead and touch on that further on. I still believe that if we do see some weakness for Tesla into 2024 in the first 2 quarters, as I expect, that's going to be a great opportunity. Again, not personalized financial advice. That's just, general financial, a kind of like idea for Tesla that I have. But again, for those that do trade Tesla in the short term, again, I do want to reiterate, I do invest in Tesla in the long term, but I have a separate trading account, and it's been very optimistic for Tesla, to say the least, in the last few trading sessions. I mean, it's just been pushing up all the way from November, and definitely great. A lot of the individuals within the Push and Profit private group definitely took advantage of the recent sell-off yesterday from the bad news, and are now just kind of giving themselves a pat on the back with how well Tesla has been performing. And so I do expect December, as I said earlier, to still be a green month for the overall markets and also Tesla. But with that said, I also want to point out to something I usually don't do publicly on YouTube. I kind of save these trade ideas for within the Push and Profit private group, but I wanted to kind of have us peel back and look at a stock that I haven't covered on this channel for almost 2 years, I believe, right? And that's a ticker symbol SPCE, Virgin Galactic. Now, if you're someone who has been subscribed to the channel for over 3 years and you're an OG, then you are probably familiar with Virgin Galactic, right? This was a stock that went to the moon, literally, right? Or I guess figuratively. But we saw it pretty much go to the moon back in the pandemic of 2021, where a lot of these SPACs, right? These companies that didn't have any fundamentally sound backing for it to even justify these high multiples do really well. And I rode the wave of SPCE going upwards. But I remember it was back in 2021.
I made a video talking about how SPCE from a technical view is on a double top pattern. Fundamentally, things are not looking good, and I expect it to bleed down. Well, it did. We actually saw SPCE fall down from when I called that out in an old video, more than 100%. Almost, or actually close to 100%, actually. And so that's something that we saw, but now that we're seeing a lot of the small caps rally up, we're seeing the 10-year treasury yield trickle downwards. We're actually seeing some breathing room take place for this, which once was a mid-cap stock, now become basically a penny stock, actually push upwards. And there's actually this very low volume relative to price gap over here. And so if we continue to see the overall markets push up, as well as the 10-year treasury yields push upwards, we could see SPCE actually go up into $3.60. And so I actually have an alert over here set up. If we see SPCE go above $2.56, I'll go ahead and enter into it, not as a swing trade, maybe for a couple of days. I don't think it's going to be that long of a swing trade. It's not going to be like weeks or months, but just as a small swing trade, or perhaps it may just be an intraday trade. But I definitely see some opportunity here. Still, fundamentally, I think SPCE, without trying to be polite, I still believe that it's a garbage company from a fundamental standpoint. I don't think there's that many individuals that could afford, $250,000 to go hop on a rocket for space tourism. I still don't think, especially this is the economy for that. But just for a short-term trade, I do see some upward momentum, especially if we're looking at it from basically November 1st, the rally that we've had till now. It did push up 97%, but of course, if we do zoom back all the way from 2021, it fell down, 99%. So definitely a trade idea. I usually reserve this for those within the Push and Profit private group, but I thought I'll go ahead and share that with you guys here publicly on YouTube. But with that said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you haven't done so already, again, just a friendly reminder to hit that subscribe button and also that like button. And before you guys go, make sure to watch this video right over here where I talk about what the bears see for Tesla going into 2024. With that said, guys, I'll see you guys on that next video. Take care.